So Ravens flock, some major news just broke a few minutes ago as of me recording this. The Cleveland Browns just drafted Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur Sanders will be headed to the AFC North. Now, I didn't think the Browns were going to do it once they picked up Dylan Gabriel, but they decided to anyway. Thought that the Browns were going to get Shedeur in the first or second round, but once those rounds passed, I figured maybe they just were waiting for a QB in 2026. But either way, this is if he turns out to be good in the first place, this would be very major news, because now one of our rivals in this division, if he turns out to be good, they would have a QB for the future right now. So I wasn't going to talk about this whole draft day saga that was revolving around Shedeur, because even though I felt bad for him, it had nothing to do with our team, so it's really not my business. But him going to the AFC North, of course, that does affect us, especially if he's actually as good as many people think he could be in the future. Now, this whole draft day slide in the first place is probably, if he turns out to be good, is going to go down as one of the most infamous draft day slides in NFL history. And as Ravens fans, we all know a thing or two about sliding in the draft, because Lamar Jackson sliding in the draft is it's the reason we got Lamar Jackson in the first place. Obviously, we all know the story. A bunch of idiots running NFL teams, they wanted Lamar to play wide receiver. It didn't work out. Well, Lamar didn't work out as a wide receiver, and they passed on him. We picked him up. Thankfully, the Saints didn't pick him up, because the Saints were one of the few teams that were very excited about Lamar during that draft process, but then they passed on him, and the rest is history once he came to us. Now, I don't think this QB class was that impressive, but that being said, I still thought Shedeur was arguably the best or the most polished QB out of all the QBs in this class in general. I could see you convincing yourself or selling yourself on the idea that Cam Ward and Jackson Dart have more upside because of the fact that they're more athletic than Shedeur, and they're more impressive runners. But once it got to the point where you're seeing Tyler Shugg and Dylan Gabriel and Jalen Milroe, when you're seeing all of these type of guys go before Shedeur, at that point it's blatantly obvious that this was definitely personal, even though many people will say you shouldn't take it personal, or maybe it's something else, or maybe they don't think he's good enough. I don't care if you don't think he's good enough or bad or whatever, but you can't convince me that you really think that Dylan Gabriel or Jalen Milroe or Tyler Shugg have more potential than he does. But a lot of people were saying that they believe it's because he's cocky, and obviously he's tied to Deion Sanders. He's his son, but I mean, we've seen a lot of cocky players go high, man. Like, we're a few years removed from guys like Baker Mayfield going first overall, so somebody being cocky, to me, that just sounds like a weak excuse in my opinion. I just think that they wanted to send him a message, and I mean, hey, I guess I don't know, man. Like, if you send the message but you win 3 games the next year, which is what I think is going to happen to the New York Giants and the Saints, is that message worth it? I don't know, man. It's not up to me to decide, because they get paid either way, so I guess they really don't care. Only the fans get hurt about it. But as far as the situation, it's definitely humbling for him, I would imagine. I even saw a video clip where somebody prank called Shedeur. Somebody prank called Shedeur pretending they were drafting him. This itself also explains why Shedeur changed his number prior to the draft, because there were reports saying that a day or two before the draft, Shedeur changed his number because it got leaked somewhere, so maybe his new number got leaked. But either way, this is something that could be very motivating for him, and this is something we got to keep an eye out for, because we're going to have to potentially play him twice a year if he becomes a starter, and this type of disrespect would be extremely motivating to anybody. I'm sure all of us in our lives have faced this type of adversity, like, even if it's on a smaller scale. From a prospect standpoint, I think, believe it or not, I think him going to the Browns actually was the best scenario for him as far as which team he would fit best with. I think Kevin Stefanski would really like somebody like him that fits his sort of that fits his sort of profile. That's that pocket passer who's very tough and willing to take a hit. Of course, the downside is he drifts in the pocket, which that's something I'm hoping we could use to our advantages, since he's still a young guy who has a long way to go. Hopefully, we could see our edge rushers really make it difficult for him to get comfortable. I would love to see that, especially if he becomes a starter. I would like to see our defensive line dominate him, because he's not the fastest guy, he's not the most athletic guy. He's capable of improvising, but at the same time, I mean, this sort of scenario is legitimately like the origin story for a villain. That's how much of a slap in the face this seems like to me, and I'm positive that Shedeur will probably take this and use this as motivation for the rest of his career, assuming he has a long career in the first place. But a lot of people were saying that his potential would be to be a guy like Tua, which I could see that, of course, because he doesn't have the strongest arm and his calling card is his extremely high level of accuracy. But at the same time, I still think he would have a slightly higher ceiling than Tua, because I think he's better at improvising than Tua, and I also think he's better at taking hits than Tua. He's not as injury prone as Tua. He also has more charisma, and he seems to be a better leader than Tua. So now you're talking about those intangibles that, even though you can't measure that could go a long way. And now, because of the fact that he just had this historic slide, he's probably going to have more motivation than Tua too, if we're being honest with you. But we'll see how this goes. Also, real quick, I got to touch on this. Some of the excuses people were making were just utterly ridiculous for not drafting him. Some people were going as far as saying teams don't want that extra, that unnecessary attention and cameras that him and his family is going to bring. And I'm like, bro, it's 2025. Like, that excuse made sense in like 1998 or whatever. But like in 2025, you literally have players. Most players at this point, they have their own podcast. You have the Netflix series quarterback, you have the Netflix series receiver, you have Hard Knocks, the in-season Hard Knocks. All of these teams have their own personal social media team that's constantly taking unnecessary pictures and video clips. Like, there's already an overabundance of cameras all over the place. Like bringing Shedeur to your team really wouldn't have made that much of a difference, in my opinion. I just felt like that was a weak cop-out. I couldn't end the video without acknowledging that. Like, to me, I just thought that was a very dumb cop-out. Shedeur, what's also interesting is, and this is also why some people say it's not always about when you get drafted, it's where you get drafted, because of the fact that the Browns are a situation where Shedeur, if he is as good as advertised, he could thrive in that situation. They have no starting quarterback. The Deshaun Watson situation fell apart. It never worked out in the first place. They traded for Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett's a bum. He's just going to be a backup or a third-string quarterback. They did draft Dillon Gabriel, but Dillon Gabriel's not that good. Like, there's not much you can really expect out of him. They signed Joe Flacco again, but Joe Flacco is like a corpse at this point. He's like 40-something years old. He's been in the league for going on 20 years, more or less. So you're talking about, really, despite all those quarterbacks they have, the starting spot is still wide open. Like, there is a possibility he could win the starting job during the preseason or at some point during the season. That's a real possibility. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below.